We're still in this COVID pandemic, this incredible health crisis that has exacerbated all of the other crises that we have always known exist in this country and around the world. The violence of white supremacy, the climate crisis. We are facing so much in humanity and our society right now, and we're here to imagine where we go from here and how do we get there through a just transition that recenters humanity, all living things on this planet, that recenters love and liberation. So with that, I think we wanted to start with kind of a grounding before we get into intros and into discussion of kind of grounding in what this just transition, what it really means to recenter all the things that I was naming, right? To recenter our relationship to the planet. So Carolyn, if you can throw up that image on the screen. So I just want to give everybody a moment to look at this image here. And the question is, what economy shapes our relationships with the planet and other living relations on her? And so on one side of the screen, on my left, maybe on your left, we've got a bunch of logos, right? Corporate logos that I think we would all say kind of rule this is the dominant extractive economy is ruled by corporate logos like these. You might imagine, like I know, yes, thank you, MK. MK is putting in the chat for all of you to put in the chat. How many logos can you name? How many logos can you name? Because then on the right hand of the diagram, we have nature, we have plants. And how many plants can we name? Drop it like that. Yes. So go ahead and drop in the chat. This is for everyone. This is for everyone to, to be able to to really kind of like ground yourself in how is it that we can, because I mean, like, this is me too. This is me too. Like, I can look at these logos and they're like, oh yeah, I see Shell, I see Nike, I see Playboy, Lord, I see McDonald's, right? But when I look at the plants, I'm like, I got a maple leaf. I'm like, I imagine like I could say what some of these are, but I would honestly be guessing. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Thank you, folks, for dropping in. 9 logos, not enough plants. Yeah. Cannabis leaf in there? I hope so. There should be. So that's really where we're at, right? I think that's what we're here to talk about, is that the dominant extractive economy is dominating our lives, and we know what the consequences of that are, right? There's way too much harm, there's way too much violence, there's way too much exploitation that is coming from that is actually key to the dominant extractive economy. And there's not enough of this right relationship to nature, to each other, and to ourselves. So that's the thing I want to start today. So now we're intros and introduce the panelists. Again, I'm Janiece Watts, she, her pronouns. I am coming to you from Dakota Land in St. Paul. I am an environmental justice advocate. Really been my life's work for the last 15 years of my life. I am a senior policy associate at Fresh Energy. That is where that's my paid job, and where I get to do this work, and I'm really grateful for. But I hold a multitude of other positions and responsibilities, and obviously roles in my life that I bring environmental justice to. That's really been my goal in life, is to bring environmental justice into every aspect of my life. Just a quick little background about me. My family heritage and history is Black and Cherokee. And so I've grown up knowing and learning about my family's heritage and resistance and resilience, and that's where my warrior spirit comes from, right? It's from centuries of resistance on this land, both on sides of being forcibly brought here, but also having to fight off colonization, settler colonialism on our land. And it's something that it's also really key to my family's history is that we have a lot of military in our family, and that's always been like a real point of contention for me, of being able to like unpack and understand how my Black and Indigenous family could, participate in a militaristic enforcement and framework of colonialism and white supremacy and environmental destruction. So that's been a real point of exploration and uncovering for me, and how I really like situate my environmental justice kind of guiding light is how do we deal with these multitudes of tensions, these multiple contradictions, and where many of us are forced to find ourselves within both the grips of destruction and violence and harm, both being done to us and possibly being perpetuators of it as well. So when I think about the just transition, and when I came to this conversation, that's something that popped up right away for me of being able to kind of bring that to the forefront of how am I managing this tension? Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna soon pass it off to the amazing panelists here. Let's just start with our organizer origin stories. I really like that phrase. I learned that from a dear friend named Charles from Pong London Jr., who many of you might know. I love the idea of the origin story. So maybe we'll start with you, Sam Grant, and then maybe pass it off to Bob after that, and then MK after that, and Emilia after that, as she arrives.
So Sam. I am Sam, son of Alice and Sam, who were also the children of organizers. To be in a Black body on Turtle Island, covered over with the cloud of a form of America, spelled with 3 Ks. Our entire experience has been clouded with anti-Black violence. So my parents spent their whole lives organizing in the civil rights movement and other movements globally for justice. So I grew up with an ethos of a sense of obligation to carry on the fight that my mother and father started. But for me personally, trying to escape that complex responsibility, I thought I was going to go to college and be a medical doctor and find a cure for cancer using naturopathic medicine. That was my path that I was like passionate about. I got to college and I had to take calculus. I wasn't good at calculus. Got to college and I had to take analytical chemistry. I wasn't good at analytical chemistry. So in a crisis, I decided that I better reflect on what I was actually capable of doing. And in 1983, 2 things happened that shaped my path. In 1983, my campus began organizing to challenge the investment of our college in South Africa's apartheid regime. So fighting to end apartheid on my campus helped me understand what Vandana Shiva later talked about as eco-apartheid as a framework for organizing. So in 1983, I made a commitment to spend the rest of my life fighting against environmental, economic, racial, and cultural injustices everywhere on the planet. Honoring and accepting that all people are my relatives and all of life is my relative. That same year, MK and others might talk about the 7 fires prophecy at some point today. I also went with my best friend who was from the Pine Ridge Reservation when he decided to return to his own spiritual path. And so we went to a ceremony, and the native elder, pulled me aside at the end of the ceremony, and he said, "Sam, you really pray in a beautiful way. But what you're praying about demonstrates to me how stuck you are in your rage cycle." And so I just want to say, I understand that because I've been there. And you have a choice to make. You can choose to focus on living with your rage, or you can choose to focus on evolving through your spiritual path. And if you're willing to evolve through your spiritual path, then you can continue to come here and I will mentor and support your path. So I made that commitment in 1983 to stay on that path of spiritual evolution and spiritual revolution. And that has guided the way that I embrace and connect to all of my other relatives and invite us towards mutual liberation instead of the zero-sum dynamics built into racialized capitalism. So I'll stop there.
Anid Bonjour, everyone. My name is Bob Blake, and I am a tribal citizen of the Red Lake Nation, owner of Solar Bear, and executive director of Native Sun. It was funny. I was at a place or downtown St. Paul one time with a bunch of people from St. Paul Central. Went to St. Paul Central, and we were all kind of sitting there, and we all realized we all work in like jobs that serve the community. And it was interesting how, we got to have instructors or people that were really focused in on community, like, Katie McGuat and all of these like other leaders, back in the day in the community. And we would hear from Spike Moss and just all these people that were Clyde Belcourt. And, we would get to see all these people. They were just like, doing all these things that we didn't realize, but they were like talking to us. And it put something inside yourself. And we were growing up at a time with like, all this, music and entertainment, like Rage Against the Machine and A Tribe Called Quest and Public Enemy. And, it was all these things that were happening around us. My family, my cousin Steve Blake, was the guy who drew the American, let's see, can you see that? The American Indian Movement sign. So I have this on my backpack. I carry this around. And my grandmother started this organization called the St. Paul American Indian Club in 1960 because she thought that people of color here in St. Paul didn't have anything. And so, she used to organize, and all of the communities would work together because, we just didn't have like a voice. And I think just growing up around that really just, kind of brought me into this part now of environmental justice and organizing and renewable energy. And I really was Carolyn when she talked about we're in this transition right now of like, just like we can make a decision. And I really believe you have to listen to life, and you really have to like really just, it's telling us something. And this whole thing with the pandemic, it's trying to tell us something, and we have to listen to it. And that's just my whole, that's my whole being now. This is all I'm going to do for the rest of my life, and is just work towards a better future, towards a better way of life for all of us, because we got to quit thinking in this first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter mentality and start thinking 7 generations ahead. And I'm just really fortunate and glad to be in a situation or in a position that my tribal nation has, listened to me and or has just taken upon my advice, and or we're moving down in this process. And I think that I have something to bring to the discussion around this, because it's powerful. These tribal nations are very powerful, and they have this. They're the only people with this unique relationship with the United States government, and they have to use it. And that's what I'm trying to do right now, everyone, and with the work that I'm doing. So I suppose we'll get more into that as we go into this conversation, but that's how I got into this. And I love this community. I just, everyone involved in this struggle, in this fight is just wonderful. And I'm so glad that I found all of you. And just want to say that I'm happy to be a part of this panel too. So I'll turn it over to MK now. Miigwech, everyone.
We're actually gonna, MK will join us when she's ready to. We're honoring, you know, obviously many of us are coming to this conversation in our homes or in other places right now. And sometimes you've got other responsibilities to take care of. And we totally honor the fact that we've got parents on this panel, and family and children are all a part of our community, and like obviously who we're doing this work for. So MK will join us when they're ready. So we're gonna just dig into the discussion, and also Emilia will join us when they get here as well. So for me and Sam and Bob right now, we'll continue with the discussion around just transition, and I would love to for either one of you to kind of pick up where I know, Bob, if you would like to continue talking about this, like this idea of the relationship that Native nations have with the government. Like that's the unique kind of position that they're in, even though obviously we know that that's full of a lot of trauma and a lot of strife and so much history there. There's something about the way that Indigenous folks and Native nations have obviously been proving and continuing the relationship to the earth, and like that's what we need to get back to. And that's so I would love for you to continue on with that, if that's some more about that.
Yeah, I wanted to just like, I think one of the things that I found really interesting in this last year here, everyone, was, the whole Line 3 with everything that's happening there with the pipeline. And, Red Lake, my tribal nation, was offered, close to $60 million, everyone, to basically, hands off of opposing the pipeline from our tribal nation standpoint. And this is what Enbridge was trying to give us. So it's basically trying to buy us off, is what they were trying to do. And, Red Lake said no. And that to me, and one of the things that was asked of me was, Bob, if we say no to this, can we still get the solar project done? And of course, everyone, I said yes, but it's going to take a little longer. Okay. But like, I guess, when I look at that and I think about like a medium income in that community is $8,000. And, we're talking about a high concentration of poverty too in this area. And for them to turn down $60 million because of their beliefs that they don't believe in this pipeline and, and the fossil fuels and let's remember too, Enbridge doesn't get taxed. I mean, they don't pay any taxes. I mean, you know what I mean? So they're just basically, paying us off with our taxes and everything. I mean, that's what it is. But that's the tricks that this industry plays on everyone, right? That's the corporate colonial capitalism mentality that they use. And it's just for Red Lake to say no to that just made me so proud of them. And at the same time wanted me to get done with this project even more because, 5 years ago, I think I sounded like a crazy man trying to tell them, let's create our own tribal utility with our own renewable energy microgrid. And, this is how we'll move the country forward and getting off of fossil fuels and meeting our carbon goals because of the unique relationship that the tribes have with this country. Because, these corporations are so embedded and Excel and Minnesota Power and these big companies are not going to move. They're going to tell us they're going to move, but they're not going to move. And they have 30-year coal contracts, but you tribal nations don't have any 30-year coal contracts. You guys, can take market share. You guys can use this new technology that's here, and we could employ our people, and we could employ this transition is what we're talking about, and really show an example. And so that's what I really talk about when I say about tribal nations really flexing their muscle. And I will say too that when the United States government fails the people and the state of Minnesota fails the people, it's the tribal nations obligation to stand up for all of us and to say what is right and to protect the sacred. And that's exactly what you saw Red Lake do when they said no to that $60 million. And they're the ones that are sending the letters to Washington, and along with White Earth, obviously, and you know, and also to asking, you know, the governor here to not have this pipeline, but also too, to this point too, everyone, you know, I see this as a great opportunity too, for as we create these tribal utilities, we create a tribal utilities commission, you know, where the tribal utilities commission act in conjunction with the public utilities commission. And so when big infrastructure needs to be done in the state of Minnesota, the state of North Dakota, wherever, that tribal nations have a say in that energy infrastructure. Because we too have a financial, you know, a financial sort of you know, risk out there, right? And so but that's more, but now we're thinking like the companies are thinking, but I'm trying to say that the Native nations can bring a more humanitarian kind of thought process to that decision making process, because it seems as though that our PUC is only thinking about the money aspect of all this, and how are we gonna, you know, create more capital for these obviously these conglomerates, you know, like Enbridge and whatnot. So that's why I say this is really, really important, and this project that I'm doing, and why I really need tribal nations to really focus in on this, because the one thing too, also I want to say too, the reason why I think that they're listening to now also too is because, you know, the pandemic, you know, we rely heavily on the money coming from gaming. And so what I've been explaining to tribal nations, everyone, is I've been saying, you know, gaming is $1 billion industry. And that has done great. I mean, I've gotten 3 college degrees because of gaming. Okay, I never would have been able to get 3 college degrees if it wasn't for gaming, but because of gaming, you know, this has done a lot for our people. But we're in the wrong business. Energy is $1 trillion business. We need to be in the energy game, and because of the technology and the ability to create these microgrids, these renewable energy microgrids, we can do this now. And so that's what I think they're really starting to look at now, is they've really seen their casinos teetering on bankruptcy because of the pandemic, because nobody was coming to the casinos, and they realized that the sun shines every day. And so this is also, I think, goes into Native people's like whole idea of like thinking 7 generations ahead. We got to think 7 generations ahead, and that's why I'm so proud of my own chairman, Daryl Seekey, because he's listening to this and he's thinking about that, and that's why he's so passionate about the solar project, because he realizes that this is about thinking 7 generations ahead. Now, in respect to him, he comes from a very traditional family, so. He's a fluent Ojibwe speaker, so he really gets this whole idea of this concept. So, you know, I that's where I kind of see, Janiece, where the tribal nations really have something to say in this, and where I really feel like tribal nations can really push our utility industry, because in my personal belief, I don't think they're going to move fast enough for us to meet our goals. And because of this legal legality here, you know, that tribes have with the federal government, we can do this. And I've looked into this, everyone. I've been working with an attorney so who's created tribal utilities. So this isn't some crazy Bob's got going on his head. I'm actually speaking with logical people that do this across the country. But I've been able to work with NREL. I've been able to work with people out of Hawaii, these attorneys, and it's amazing where this has led me to, and everyone's pretty excited about what we're doing in Red Lake, and I believe that this will be a roadmap, and this then can then other tribes and tribal nations can follow this. But I believe that this is a big part of how we get to our goals by pushing the big guys, and so that's how I see the tribal nations really helping with this, Janiece, to answer your question.
Thank you, Bob. Yes. Yeah, there is the roadmap, and Kevin, we all need to be following this roadmap. Thank you so much for sharing that. Sam, is there things there that you are resonating with that you want to reflect on? I was here shaking my fist. I don't know where this was sitting in y'all's bodies as you were hearing from Bob, but it's making me shake my fist.
Thank you, Janiece, and thank you, Bob. So point one, the United States' entire history from 1789, when the Northwest Ordinance was passed, which recognized treaties with Native nations as the supreme law of the land. And it was put into the Constitution. So everybody in white supremacist bodies goes around holding up the Constitution as their flag and saying, we're defending this and we're interpreting this in a way that reinforces our belief that this is a white nation. Article 6 of the Constitution says treaties are the supreme law of the land. It's in the best interest of everybody, regardless of the kind of body you're in, to honor treaty rights as critical to the path of mutual liberation. I'm in a Black body. Black bodies source from a spiritual philosophy or cosmology of complementarity. Some people talk about it as Ubuntu cosmology. I am because we are all relatives to each other, which is a match for indigenous philosophies here on Turtle Island. So we have to honor treaty rights, and we also have to make a fundamental commitment as good relatives to end heteropatriarchy and to end anti-Black violence and to end economic injustice. And we get caught up in what some people call the oppression Olympics. But the challenge of the oppression Olympics language is we also say that we can't honor the narratives coming from within cultures. So I think the revolution is necessarily an intercultural revolution where we honor the dreaming process and the practices that come from each of our cultures. And we learn how to braid our sensibilities and dreams and commitments and obligations together. And that's how we grow the new world. So the movement for Black Lives has laid out a red, black, and green version of the New Deal. And they have 6 petals in their orientation. So water, as the indigenous people say, water is life. If we don't rethink our relationship with water, we're all going to die, right? Because our bodies are mostly composed of water. The older we get, the less water we retain in our bodies. And that's a symbolic journey towards the end of life when our body becomes like desert-like and can't hold water very well, right? So protecting water requires an evolution of democracy, as the map that Carolyn put up at the beginning, the just transition map, at the bottom of that map is deep democracy. Deep democracy requires watershed governance, which means we will, as human beings, in relationship with all of life, make no decisions that harm the well-being of water. Changing our relationship with water is fundamental to everything else that we do. The second petal of the flower, Bob talked about extensively just a few minutes ago, and that's energy. We have to change our relationship with energy. We have an energy grid largely controlled by energy monopolies, our investor-owned utilities. Hidden in the fray is the reality that there's also a whole lot of democratically owned utilities. In rural areas, there's rural energy cooperatives. We need to foster a transition where we hospice investor-owned utilities, because who's the investor? It's our energy, so democracy has to be the investor, not elite economic interests. That is not an easy journey because we are so entrenched in a paradigm of racialized capitalism that too many people believe we can't see our way towards that path. So we're just going to accept slavery. We're going to accept the continuation of our oppression. I think it's time to say we will not be enslaved any longer. I think it's time to go back to the mantra of the Haitian Revolution between 1793 and 1804 and say, we are calling an abolition on every form of oppression, on any body, on any community, on any landscape, everywhere on Mother Earth. That's our task. That's our obligation. The third petal of the flower is land. So anarchists have this, well-known saying that property is theft. And the rest of us are all struggling to be homeowners and landowners. So we're part of the problem. We have to recognize that we are a very large part of the problem. And we have to have empathy for ourselves. We're part of the problem because all alternatives have been foreclosed. You think about Margaret Thatcher in 1979, who said very clearly in her, great dialogue of neoliberalism, said, I am defending that there is no alternative. So Tina, T-I-N-A, there is no alternative. This is economic violence at the extreme level, picked up by the Koch brothers, who are moving towards maximum feasible power on the global scale, with the US empire governing the entire planet and also governing all of the other planets, in the Milky Way. It's insane. And they use a logic of liberalism that makes too many people think they're talking about us too. We're not included. Their philosophy is for the top 1/2 of 1%, not for us. So we have to democratize land relations. The fourth petal is labor. Too many of us think that the goal is a living wage job. So we fought for 15. White Earth Nation made it formal policy that everybody gets $16 an hour, right? And I think Laura Chamberlain in the chat also talked about the way that Native nations have pushed for vaccines faster than the rest of us. So White Earth was the first place in Minnesota to get to 100% vaccination of its population. And then they invited people in the surrounding area to also come get vaccinated. That's a profound example of hospitality. If we began to practice that profound hospitality interculturally with each other, we would solve these problems. So beyond thinking about what job can I get that's going to allow me to take care of my family, I think that we need to decommodify our sense of what makes life work. So how can we reduce the cost of living? The way to reduce our cost of living is to value relationship above profit. So part of the question of labor is caught up in this bigger question of why are we fighting for a job when really what we're fighting for is healthy relationships with all of life. That's the objective. So it's beyond a Marxist orientation and it's towards an indigenous orientation, which is what Bob was getting at. Honoring indigenous nations and thinking through and honoring the Seven Fires prophecy is actually in the benefit of all of us. The fifth petal is economy. What kind of an economy do we want to have? Well, I think we can't have an economy that's not a circular economy that honors what it produces and what it extracts. And it has to sort of practice a profound level of reciprocity, the same way that a healthy relationship practices reciprocity. And if our economy isn't a resource for greater and greater reciprocity, then the economy needs to be composted and replaced with something that actually does that. And then finally, democracy as the last petal. We need to organize a deeper democracy that sources from a humble and vulnerable commitment to pay attention every single day of our lives to, am I being a good relative to those frontline workers who work for Enbridge? Am I being a good relative to the people whose land is being devastated by the allowing of this pipeline to come across northern Minnesota? Am I being a good relative to my ancestors who have told me that I have an obligation to stand up and fight beyond my capacity right now? Because the world needs us to be more than we know how to be in order for the world to evolve according to its sacred path, its sacred vibration. So these are some of the things I want to say up front, but I'll close by talking quickly about line 3. Line 3 is facilitating the flow of 50 coal plants through Minnesota, even when no economic demand was ever proven for this pipeline. So it is causing significant harm to the earth. And it's making any notion of climate integrity that the state of Minnesota says it has a joke. And it's also reinforcing what a lot of people said we couldn't talk about, because they said there is no relationship between extractivism and violence against Native women and girls. Well, what have we found out? There's a very strong correlation, a direct impact on the violence and predation against Native women and girls by pipeline workers of Enbridge. And there's a direct tie between Enbridge and the security state, which is a racialized security state, which is putting resources into the defense of killing life and violating the sanctity of life of the people who are saying, we told you this pipeline wasn't okay. Why aren't you listening to the people? So what do we have to do beyond what we've done so far to actually midwife together a genuine, abiding, deep democracy that cannot be stopped? I'll stop there.
How are y'all doing in the who are listening to this brilliance of Sam Grant and Bob Blake? I feel it resonating in my body in so many different ways. There's something called somatics that I'm learning a lot about. Okay, what's this? You all can hear me? Can you all hear me? Okay. There's an unmute thing that popped up. So I was like, oh no, I thought I did unmute myself. Okay, so back to somatics and just kind of like how this like brilliance is flowing through you, this knowledge, and really this like call to action, right? That we all need to completely reevaluate and recommit to a different way of relating to one another and relating to the planet. And there's a lot of ways we can do that. But it takes like a real deep understanding of really kind of where you're at in your life, on your kind of journey for justice and liberation and decolonization, and knowing that is the work. And how do you bring that into every aspect of where you are, every place that you are, every aspect of your work that you're doing. I wanted to drop in the chat a resource and ask our panel what kind of what does just transition feel like? What does it mean to our senses? What does it look like? What does it smell like? What does it sound like? This resource that MK first told, I learned from you, MK, for Movement Generation about the just transition. I read it all last night and was just, as I was like really preparing for this event, and really had me thinking and going on a lot of different wavelengths about what does regeneration, what does a regenerative economy look like? What does ecology, what does that really mean to me? Like there's a lot of different words that eco actually means home, right? Like, so ecology, right, is like home and knowledge, I think is the one, right? Economy is like the management of the home. It doesn't just mean money, right? It doesn't just mean finances and trade or GDP. Like these things are really just like made up. And we have unfortunately been put into this capitalist, corporate, consumerist mindset that is the only way to measure wealth and power. But we know that there are so many other, the real wealth and power comes from within, and it comes from our relationships with each other and with the planet. So yeah, what does a just transition mean to your senses? All the senses: look, touch, feel, smell.
I can hop in here.
Yes, MK, all right.
Just transition right now feels like being cared for by my multitude, by my beloveds. It feels like flowing, right? We, Emilia and I were not able to come like right at 11, right on time. I mean, I was caretaking and nursing a baby who put me in a little nap trap, like I couldn't move, and I tried to pry away and I couldn't. And so it meant, Sam, and actually it meant the universe just offering us what we need, right? So I'm in a Viet body, right? My people came here in mass a little over 45 years ago, right? So it's only appropriate. And I'm thinking about Octavia as like, so be it, see to it, right? Because I'm like, yes, that's what emerged, right? In our current moment, in our situation, is that Mother Earth was like, yo, let's center Indigenous and Black knowledge systems embodied through Bob and Sam first, right? And then MK, you're going to slip in later, just like how Viet people slipped in, right? About over 45 years ago, right? When Bayard Rustin, A. Philip Randolph, Hazel N. Dukes, Coretta Scott King, and like 80 other, civil rights leaders said, y'all, don't be punks, okay? Viet people have a right. I know you don't want them here, but Viet people have a right to be here too, because y'all did some nasty stuff in their country, right? And that's why I'm here right now. And so, little introduction, I'll just slip a tiny origin, like I think just kind of going back to that question. So my name is MK, Nguyen Lan Mer Kim, or MK. So I was named after the biblical Virgin Mary, because the missionaries came. The French missionaries came, right? And they converted whole villages of Viet people into Catholicism, right? And so I'm named after the biblical Virgin Mary. And I'm also named after my father's first love, who's like not my mother, by the way. And I am... and if you know anything about Mary, like Mary in Latin means like, oh, bitter one, right? And let's see, what else is there? It means oh, bitter one. And then also because I'm named after a woman who is not my mother, right? But who was a first love to my dad. I see like the position and place, right? My place on earth, ever since I was little, right? To be like both a celebrated and conflicted figure, right? In this world. And I get this term, celebrated and conflicted figure, or this concept that I get from Joy James, like the captive maternal, right? Applying it inside of a Viet body, that this good refugee, which is model minority's cousin, right? This is the place and position from which I need to hold, right? As a person who lives inside a Viet body on Turtle Island, is that I am here while United States, the government didn't want me. Black folks fought for me to be here, my people to be here, right? And then elites were like, well, what are we going to do with that? So then they co-opted it, and they were like, then they made me the good refugee, right? And then they made me they try to make me thankful and grateful for being on this land, right? And so I've been just like other Asian folks, right? Been wedged in the situation where I'm supposed to perpetuate white supremacy and racial monopoly capitalism and extractivism, right? And just go right along that train or right along that sinking ship. But what I've been blessed and humbled and honored, right? To be a part of, to learn, to be connected to lineage around. So I grew up in the Frogtown Midway, Union Park, Summit University cusp. Lexington and Houston University was where I pretty much grew up, where the Wilder Center is, Popeyes, White Castle, the Cricket Store. That was my childcare, right? Because, it was the 80s and my parents were working. They owned a patchwork. They got some money from a patchwork loan system that people have, right? And they used their turn with the pot of money, and they leased a small little hole in the wall where the Cricket Store is right now, to open up a little banh mi shop. So my parents actually brought the banh mi to the Twin Cities, little known fact. And so I got a chance to be in close proximity to a lot of different kinds of people, a multitude of people, right? Which allowed me to see with intention, right? With guidance and with mentorship, it allowed me to see many places and many people, my relationship with people as home, right? So feeling at home, and that sense of home and the sense of wonder and the sense of like kind of feeling off, like you don't know what's going on. You see all this, you see destruction, you see people being mistreated around you, but you couldn't name what it is, like having that feeling inside of you all the time and that curiosity about why, right? It kind of led me to a lot of different kind of homes and places. And so maybe I'll stop there because I feel like I've been talking a lot. And so, but that's a little piece of how I landed in this place today with you all is from the place of where I grew up and it on Turtle Island, right? In the Frogtown Rondo, Midway, Union Park area. And what else is there? Maybe I'll pause. I'll take a minute to breathe and let oxygen get into my brain and just listen to the wisdom of Sam and Robert. And if Emilia's here, give some space for her, and then I'll jump in.
Thank you, MK. I'm so glad that you're able to jump in. And like, it's actually just so, oh gosh, sorry, notifications. So it's actually so interesting. And like from your story of being via people come in here, in the 60s as refugees, but the way that like our event just like in a lot of ways modeled that, right? Like between Bob, Sam, and I being Black and Indigenous folks here, having the space kind of first, and then you coming in a little bit later. I just thought that was really amazing the way you tied that together and was able to like really illustrate like sometimes this is the way the universe works, and it was able to like show us that this is all this is the legacy and the continuum that we are in with our ancestors, and our future generations and present generations, like your babies. So thank you. I'm so glad you were able to join us and speak to that. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll just pass it. Bob, is there something that's resonating with you, or that you want to jump into?
Yeah, man, it's beautiful, MK, and obviously, I always tell people I'm a Jedi of Sam Grant. I'm one of Sam Grant's Jedis, justice, equity, diversity, inclusion Jedi. But like I just want to say, like, we've got to recognize that, there are some people that had dreams about this, a long time ago. They had dreams about this moment, everyone. And I know every generation says to themselves that, oh, we're the generation. It was our moment. It was our time. I'm telling you, we're facing extinction, everyone. And we need to step up. And I've just never seen an opportunity like, where, the environmental, social, and economic justice all comes together. And this is the moment. And we got to come together. And I don't think it's, no coincidence that, things have started right here in the Twin Cities and has reverberated all around the world. And I've always known that, we've had some like, down people here, that were always leading some cool stuff. And so, I mean, I just want to say that, this, all this violence and this guns and just everything that's happening, like this isn't the way for us to be, man. We don't have to live like this. They telling us we got to live like this. We don't have to accept it. That's what I'm saying. We have the power, everyone. The people got the power, and we don't have to accept this, and we can change this. And people were asking me, Bob, why did you run for public office? Bob, why did you start a company? Bob, why did you start a nonprofit? Bob, why do you go do all this? Because I said, because I can, because I can do this. And I'm not going to wait for somebody else to do it, because I was kind of sitting back like, oh, someone's going to take care of that. Someone's going to get on that. But you know what, everyone, we got to just step up and do it. And that's what I really think about when I think about this just transition, like, I'm going to be very honest with you. I was very scared when I spoke to my tribal council at first, and I was telling them all this stuff, and man, it was nerve wracking. But you know what? Just someone just got up and said, Bob is speaking from the heart. We need to listen to him. And that's what I ask all of you to do, is just speak from your heart and follow that. And you can't stop love, everyone. They can't stop us, and we're going to move forward. And that's what powers me every day. Every day I get up, man. I love this work, man. I eat this up, man. I just, I want more and more of it. And, I'm going to fight, and I just ask all of you to do the same too. So, once again, Miigwech, and let me pass it to Emilia. Is Emilia back on, or maybe it's Sam?
Emilia's not here yet. Okay. Yeah. So Bob talked about love. Two people who were mentors of mine, who are now ancestors, Jimmy and Grace Lee Boggs, talked about at the root of this is a revolution in values. And a good friend of mine also from the Red Lake Nation, who is now working as a senior program officer in one of our foundations, here in the region, came to a workshop I did, back in 2001, and I was all proud of myself with a little bit of pathetic ego for facilitating the first conference in the Twin Cities at William Mitchell's College of Law on structural racism. And he let me get through the whole workshop. And at the end of it, he came up and said, Sam, you are breaking it down that ending structural racism is the key to us being good relatives to each other. But what is racism? Racism is a false narrative that happens after people's cultural identities have already been destroyed. And so when you are fighting against racism, you're fighting for inclusion in a toxic system. And that's not the fight, brother. So I'm thankful that he didn't just wreck my show in the middle of it. He waited till the end. It gave me a loving intervention, and it changed my life. So I already kind of knew this in my head, but he made me know it in my heart and in my gut. And so as we take on this fight against racism and we think about a just transition, there's two other concepts I want us to center in the dialogue about a just transition. One is genocide. We have to end genocide. And we also have to end ecocide. And these things are fundamentally related. So as MK talked about how she got her name, right? So our names are colonial constructs. In many ways, our bodies are colonial constructs, right? So how do we decolonize our sense of who and what we are? And so Janiece asked us to think about, what does it look like, feel like, smell like to be in the midst of a just transition? So one piece of that story I want to speak to from the ethos of love is that when I walk out of my house, I feel like my wife and daughter and my dog are my little sacred inner tribe. And life is good when I'm here with my people. As soon as I walk out my front door, I feel the energy of structural violence. It's like thick, like pollution that makes it impossible to breathe. So it's important for people to understand that living in a time space of environmental and climate injustice since 1442, in Black bodies since 1442, and Native bodies here on Turtle Island since 1492. Living in our bodies since the beginning of colonialism, we have been forced to experience an inhospitable climate in which we can't breathe because racism and colonialism take away our breath by taking away our land and taking away our languages and taking away our self-determined ecologies. What Bob is saying, which I totally resonate with, and what MK is saying, and what Emilia will say when she's here, is that we have to first make the choice to be no one's slave. We have to make that choice. And we have to understand that in order for me to not be a slave, I have to support your liberation. Because if you're enslaved, I'll be next. And we have been taught to believe, and MK spoke to this, we've been taught to believe that we're individuals. And we've been taught to believe that America is the land of milk and honey. And once you get here, whoa, everything is groovy. Well, that's never been true in this body that I'm in. It's never, ever been true. Except when I go to a Native nation and I'm sitting around a campfire and people are telling delicious jokes and they're just loving each other. Then I'm like, This is all right. Turtle Island is cool. Turtle Island is cool. I love Turtle Island. But when can I love America? When can I love America? This is a fight I had growing up through my childhood with my dad. My dad was a Buffalo soldier in World War II. My dad was in a troop of Black soldiers who were in Italy, and they had a white lieutenant who was, sort of controlling. He was the dominator. He tried to get those Black soldiers to walk through a minefield in order to get away from the German soldiers that were coming down the hill. And he's like, there's no way that we're going to get, and live past this if we don't just go through this minefield. And all the Black soldiers were like, well, we'd rather fight than just die. That's like suicide to go through that minefield. And the lieutenant got really mad at him, and he stormed into the minefield and he blew his body up. And the soldiers said, told you so. And my dad turned around to his relatives and he said, that's not who we are. Stop it. And he got down on his chest and he crawled through that minefield and he carried that broken body of that white supremacist fool on his back and brought him out of that, got him onto a medevac so he could get his body out of there. That's humanity. We need to practice that kind of spiritual, radical humanity if we're going to have a chance to honor the Seven Fires prophecy, to honor the dictates of transformative organizing and the just transition, and move the world towards love. We can do this, y'all. We got this.
Sam, my goodness. I told y'all at the beginning how I have a lot of military personnel in my family. So that story just really hit me hard. But let's welcome Emilia. You here with us? You've been able to join. Would love for you to give us share with us your kind of origin story. That's what how we started our intros, and just kind of what a just transition looks and feels and sounds and smells like. What does that mean to your senses is kind of the question we're on.
Ever since I read that question, I've been reflecting deeply on that, and thank you so much for having me. You guys hear me well?
Yep.
Okay, good. My name is Emilia Gonzalez Avalos. I'm the director of Unidos, Minnesota. We are a statewide organization that builds power in the Latinx community for social, racial, and economic justice. And that question helped me realize that it is part of our humanity to just care for people and care for the environment. We are born with that, I don't want to say quality, but that sort of nature within us to exist, to be part of something greater than us. And I think I saw glimpses of what that public care looked like as a very young child after the 1985 earthquake in Mexico City, when, it was a devastating earthquake. And my family lived around the sweatshop areas where there was a lot of devastation. And I remember there wasn't any water, that, the environment looked gloomy and dusty, and there was collective pain. And I witnessed also people coming out and removing rocks and debris with their bare hands, trying to rescue and save their loved ones, and people organizing themselves. So that is the first memory that I have of people coming together to care for one another. And then I also realized that I come from a family where still to this day, in that same house where the earthquake happened, my family lives, my aunts and uncles still live and visit and coexist together. Like they live a life of togetherness. And it really became a thing as a not a job, but like a purpose of life. When I migrated to the state of Minnesota, I was 12 years old. And I've been, going to school and living life as an undocumented woman. And in 2009, I had my first child, and I realized that I was the third generation of immigrants coming into the US, and I still had that possibility of my kids being raised without a parent. I was raised for a long time without one of my parents. Right now, I still have my dad here, but then my mother is in Mexico, and both my parents grew up that way because their parents also migrated. So I was the third generation that had gone through that, and my daughter still had that possibility, and that really moved my nature and nurture instinct to understand that I was not the only one, and that I had to do something about it, be intentional about figuring out how our greater call can come together and be part of a movement. And then, I think that this is, we live in this society where we're told that these are, jobs or trades, but truly the call to organize is an answer to very old and generational ways of being that are not formally educated or educational, but it's truly something that we have always done for generations and generations that have kept us alive and going and building together. So it's not super complicated, and sometimes there's a conversation about the different orientations and language and all this lingo that is created under this formal umbrella of organizing that is very simple. You just care for one another and put that into action and solidarity as a commitment to ourselves, a commitment to Mother Earth, to exist without being separated. We don't own the land, we're part of it. We're part of our community, we are part of our family, we are part of an ecosystem. We just move like that in life. And so I guess the story didn't start with me. When I thought about that, it's been walked and I'm part of it, and people will be also part of it. So that's my answer.
Love it.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm so glad that you're able to join us. Obviously, you are in transit right now and you've got a mask on because this is this COVID era that we are all living in. So thank you so much for sharing, being able to give your time, this time that you've been able to give, and just situating us in reality right now that we all got stuff to do and we're all moving through a lot. But I really love what you said, Emilia, about being this origin story didn't start with you. Your organized origin story doesn't start with you. And I feel like that is something that I certainly resonate with, and that all of us have spoken to, that again, we're all coming from a continuum of our family's histories and heritage. Our ancestors have gotten us here. They're the ones who've got us here, and we're going to continue to do this work so that our descendants will be able to look back on us as ancestors and say that this is how they've come to the work and how they will continue it, because we'll have to. Because it is about just caring for one another. It's really not hard. It's really that simple. It's all about love and about care. But in a world that is extractive and exploitative and violent, finding that care and love and peace is difficult. But we have the roadmap. Our ancestors got us here. They managed to break out of a lot of serious detrimental chains to get us here. But the work isn't done. I'll just invite our panelists to jump in with any other residences. And then if there's folks who have questions and want to either drop them in the chat or come off mute to ask, I think we have time for a couple questions, and we'll go till, I think, 12:25 or to end at 12:30. Okay, so Bob, Sam, MK, residences you'd like to share?
Yeah, I want to vibe off of what I think Bob, Bob was like living, he was describing, for me, what Erica Huggins described as like quick strike, right? Just like do it, right? You have the right to do it. I belong to everyone and no one because I belong to MK first, right? That's from Maya Angelou. But I would love to learn, from my beloveds who I'm sharing a conversation with, and then who are designated, you know what I mean, to be like just people who are spotlighted. And then also my beloveds in the space. I see Mora's here, Munir's here, Martin is here, Juhi is here. Can I just say though, so quick strike, right? Like how are you grounding just transition in your life, right? From your position and place with the people you are in close proximity to, the people who you do life with, right? And I just want to say, Munir, I still got the just transition zines that your students created, right? It's still all up in here. And I want to let you know I still have it and I should drop it off to you. But I would love to, before we go to Q&A, if we have time, but I just love to know how other folks how are we grounding this right now? How are we, what are we manifesting so that people can sense, smell, touch, and hear and feel, right, what this trust transition looks like? And maybe I model. But right now, it is, my front line would be in my kid's classroom. My kid is in kindergarten. My kid right now in science class is learning that our water relative, our air relative, our plant relative, our soil relative, that they are natural resources, that they are things, right? That they are things that turn into products that we consume, right? Which is fundamentally wrong when we apply a just transition lens into the stuff, right? So the front line has been, and the struggle has been with with the teachers I'm in relationship with, the principal, and the district, SPPS, right? When they're trying to teach our kids at a very young age, right? That these are natural resources and not our relatives. Not people who we should be in right relationship with, right? So that's one. And they're also talking, and my kid is also being taught by SPPS, right? That economy is finance. And I swear to God, September, my kids started learning about, there was curriculum on scarcity, nothing about abundance, nothing. That's a jump off point for a 5-year-old. So that's one of the ways in which I am. That's one of my front lines right now, right? That's an example.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I sort of floated in the story I was telling, so I'll come back to it. As soon as I walk out my door, I feel the energy of structural violence thick on my skin as a manifestation of not being able to breathe. As an example, there's property managers in my townhome complex in these, large, gruffy white bodies. And they see me walking down to, hop in my vehicle with my, a radical imagination will set us free, sweatshirt on. And I get this look like, you don't have the right to exist in our world, mofo. And it was just like intense. And so I just smiled and just put this energy out there. It's like, y'all are fading, y'all are fading, y'all are fading. Come and join the human race, y'all. Come and join us. We're ready for you. So a just transition, and this is a really important aspect of it, it's not based on hate. It's not based on fear. It's not based on extraction, exploitation, or exclusion. And we have to heal through the ways all of us have internalized and metabolized, practicing back what we have experienced in our bodies. So we have to, and Janiece talks about this, somatics or body wisdom. We have to heal inside our bodies. It's not in our heads, it's in our hearts, it's in our spirits. We have to heal in the way that we've internalized all of this toxicity in our cells, and we cannot do that alone. We have to do that in relationship to each other. So a just transition looks like honoring those front lines that we have. So MK talked about the school as one front line for her. I pulled my daughter out of school the last 3 days because she has a major assignment to complete to graduate from 6th grade. And she said, Daddy, if I go to school, I'm not going to get this assignment done. You choose what you want to do, Pops. So we've kept her out of school and we work with her like 12 hours a day on getting this assignment done, because the assignment is, who's your family? Who do you come from? Who are you now? Who are you becoming? How are you going to get there? That's an awesome 6th grade assignment. So I sent a note to her teacher, said, I'm loving this assignment, but the curriculum inside the classroom is not a match for what this assignment requires. So she's not coming because I want her to do this assignment the way that matches who she is. And the teacher said, hell yeah, do it. That's nice. That's nice. So I've got a partnership inside the classroom who, instead of sending a note to the child protection system, oh, Sam's not getting his kid in school, 3 strikes, so let's take that kid away from Sam. They're saying, go Sam, go Soul, get that assignment done the way that it feels right in your spirit. And so that's delicious. So part of what we have to do in the just transition is what Bob was talking about. We demand it of ourselves in every breath we breathe, in every thought we think, in every act we take. And by virtue of doing that, the world around us sort of says, either you crazy or I want to be that way too. How can I be that way too? Now, part of our obligation as relatives is when we get that question, we have to stand with people in active solidarity and help them bring that out into the world so that we're not alone in it. Because if we're alone, then we're going to be starved out. We're going to be re-enslaved. And the only pathway to nobody being a slave is to work on abolition, which is to work on loving relationship with all of life in every conceivable way.
You know, I just want to say real quick too that, you know, our ending here, while we're on the line, we were listening to all of this. I got 2 texts, one from my solar crew, Black and brown bodies, and led by a Mexican-American who's up there on the Red Lake Nation, installing solar right now. So I think that's beautiful that all was coming together and doing something great. And they're finishing up today, right, on one of the projects that we're doing. And the second text I got was my education director put in the EPA grant for the K-12 curriculum for the Solar Cup program. And this is all about the Solar Bear family and about them, teaching STEM and language, the Ojibwe language. And when we were creating this whole thing, one of the things I said, I've been in school all these years and got all this whatever, but I've never been taught empathy, I said, I want these bears teaching empathy. I want these bears to teach the kids empathy, man. I want them to learn, how to care for one another and how to put themselves in other people's places. And then maybe we can bring some love back into this world. And when I hear MK talk about what she's dealing with at school, and I hear Sam talking about that, creating tribal utilities commissions, creating a big old solar project, creating, job programs for inmates at the Will River Correctional Facility, whatever, all that stuff I'm doing. I just feel like this will be the most important work I do, is to get this K-12 curriculum off the ground, because, they are the future. The kids are the future. And I want to be able to give them the tools that they're going to need to fight this problem, which is climate change in the future. And that's why this to me is just so important. And so I was really happy to hear that today, and to get that good news as I'm sitting here listening to all this. But I wanted to share that with all of you because, we got to keep fighting, and we got to keep marching on. Marching on in Ojibwe means moving forward. We got to keep marching on, everyone, because, like I said, they can't stop us. There's too much love here. So, miigwech, everyone, and I'll kick it to you, Janiece.
Thank you, Bob. That's so cool to hear. Thank you for sharing that. I'd love to kick it back to Emilia if you're able to and still on to give your part in work.
Thank you. I just made it home. So
excellent.
thank you so much for having me. And so I think the question is what is the role that I'm going to hold or my commitment for the transition. And I think a part of it is the situation of the mundane, the ability to build community, supporting the building of community-led, community-grounded initiatives that can support the training, capacity building, and infrastructure, like our institutions of the future in terms of energy in general. So I think it is important to have those pipelines. It is important to also have pipelines that can lead to year-round sustainable work and creation of wealth and reciprocity, to be part of the abundance, right? As M.K. Kinley described it. If it is like the container is in white supremacy. So as we build a transition, how are we going to challenge that container of white supremacy? What are the propositions that we're bringing to the table to make sure that the institutional challenges remain grounded, remain clear, remain supportive of the ones that are coming? So that is my role in terms of supporting the cooperative of BIPOC workers that is in the works in the state of Minnesota. This is a cooperative of construction and energy workers that have been on the margins and the shadows due to language barriers, immigration status, and whatnot. So our work is to build infrastructure, institution, and technical assistance so that they don't become, as a planet, disposable and expendable. So it is an ambitious project, and I am here in full representation and accountability because they still have their jobs. They cannot leave those jobs to go fully into this other field because the jobs that they're doing right now still pay year-round wages that are better. So how do we make sure that if we are building an offer, it's an offer that is actually better than the one we have right now? And this is part of why there's all this tension in the field of energy and the unions and the pipelines and all that, right? How do we build a better offer that is sustainable, that protects and centers our Mother Earth, but that is also centering around people and benefits of the people in this wealthy world, in this world of abundance, in this world where nobody has to be left behind, and the very few make those choices. So that is where we are right now. We also are in alignment, in coalition with many of you. We're pushing for ethnic studies, anti-racist curriculum in all the schools. And as a parent, Sam knows my daughter. My daughter goes to a small community private school in Minneapolis, and she is awakening to that white supremacy in curriculum, and the girl is pushing, and it's painful. She's growing on that, and I'm being, all these battles are connected, so I'm trying to be a supporting mother. My child is also at home because she needs to rest and regenerate, because emotional labor is labor. It's the cooperative and the infrastructure for that training, a continuation of what Robert and Janiece are doing. What is next, and how can we support that? And the rebuilding of our communities after this year of pandemic, centering the notion that essential work doesn't have to be sacrificial and shouldn't be expendable. So I think that is the framework in which we have treated the land, the earth, the world in general. So I am looking forward to that change of paradigm, putting the seeds for that change, and doing that with y'all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for sharing so much of your brilliance and wisdom today. We are coming to the end of time, but I feel so blessed to have been part of this conversation and to know all this incredible work that's being done, and to give space to talk about it, because I imagine sometimes you're deep in the work, and sometimes you have to have that space to be reflective and introspective about it, and to be expansive about it, and just share it out there. And so hopefully, I think maybe with the kind of follow-up that Carolyn's going to give to close us out, all of our contact information may be shared so that we can stay connected with one another. And so we'll keep on this just transition together. I'm wishing you all peace and love and wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing.